Welcome to Hutchinson Economic Developments. My name is Miles Seppold. I'm the Economic Development Director for the city. And this week on our program, we're going to have updates on current projects. And then in our second segment, we're going to dig into some of the frequently asked questions that come my way on a pretty regular basis. And we'll try to answer those as best we can. Probably the biggest news item is the Jorgensen Hotel redevelopment. So this project is rolling along, and we're at a point now where the developer has acquired both the Jorgensen building and the Cook Jewelry building. Cook Jewelry has now closed. They finished up their business after I think 92 years or something, so quite a run. And they've closed, and they're in the process of just packing up the last few items and moving out of that building. So currently what's going on is that they're in the process of beginning demolition of both of those buildings. So when they do that, they have to take certain things out before the wrecking ball comes down. So they have to remove the carpet, they have to remove any asbestos or hazardous materials, mercury light switches, the old-fashioned light switches, stuff like that. So that's what they're working on right now. And then I would think sometime in February, probably towards the end of February, that's when we'll probably get to full-scale demolition. And I think that's when we'll see the wrecking ball, and that's when things will get a lot more interesting over at the Jorgensen. The other big project going on downtown is the Landing. So this is the new 81-unit apartment complex that's going up on the north end of Franklin next to the river. That will be opening in December of this year. So construction is going on right through the winter. So here I went out a couple days ago and took a couple pictures of it. So here you can see just some of the materials stacked up on the site. They have these big trusses that they've been stockpiling because that's the next step in the process. Here's a picture of the west end of the building looking east. So that's looking into where the garages are going to be, where you'll drive in for the first level parking. Then here's a view on the east side of the building. You can see the beams up above the top of that structure. That's the garage that you're seeing there on that first level. And then the beams up above, they got to put in a bunch of wooden trusses yet, and then they'll start working on the first floor of apartments. And there'll be 3 levels that are going to go above what you're seeing there right now. So here's a view on the north end, and you can see where they're putting in some of the trusses on that north side. So they got to do that all the way around. Then they can start constructing the floor for the first floor apartments, and then it will go up from there. So just to kind of refresh you on where this is going all together, it'll be a big L-shaped building, kind of a reverse L, and it'll be 4 stories when it's all said and done. So it'll get pretty tall. On the southeast corner of the building towards Dairy Queen, there's going to be a rooftop patio. On the north side of the building towards the river, there'll be sort of an outdoor patio with a fire pit for residents. Probably in the spring, I would say May or June, probably the city's going to come in. We'll construct a stormwater retention pond on the northwest corner. That's the upper left on your screen. And then next to that, there'll be a little dog park that'll get put in for residents. And then there'll be sidewalks all around the building. And then currently the city, we're looking at potentially putting in a trail segment that would connect Girl Scout Park with Cedar Park along the river. So we're still evaluating that. And the biggest thing, like many things, it really comes down to funding. If we can find the dollars to make this happen, I think the desire would be to get it done as soon as possible. But that all just depends on the budget. Just as a reminder now, this project, it's going to be 81 apartments that are going to come available for people to rent. So it'll be market rate rents. These are anywhere from studio apartments up to 3-bedroom apartments, and the rents will range anywhere from $1,100 to $1,700 a month. And what's going to happen is that a lot of people are going to be probably moving over from maybe existing apartments, and that'll free up some other apartments that are lower on the rent scale. So it's really going to open up a lot of apartments at all rent levels. And then finally, too, just to remind everybody, there's a low income component to this project. So about 16 of these 81 apartments have to be made available to people that are low to moderate income. So it's going to benefit everybody. I did get some pictures, and this is kind of just showing you this again from last week, or our last episode. So this is what the kitchen's going to look like in these things. It'll have granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, so it'll be pretty nice. Here's a picture of what the fitness room is going to look like. Here's a picture of the community room for residents that they'll be able to reserve. This is what the garage will look like when that's completed. And then finally, here's the rooftop patio that people can reserve for events and activities and just hanging out on top of the building. So that should be a pretty neat feature. So all of this is coming, I think next fall, winter is when they plan to have this thing done. So it should move pretty quick. The other major news item is that Guiding Light Child Care Center is now open for business. So I put the phone number right there. They have 42 child care slots available. This is for preschool kids or school-age kids. And they're accepting new kids right now. So I put the phone number there. Give them a call. If you need child care yourself, or you know anybody that needs child care, I know Guiding Light is enrolling kids right now. So give them a call and they should be able to set you up. Finally, just a reminder that we have our community smartphone application that's online, and people can go to the App Store and download this thing. Just search for Much and Hutch, and it's really going to be the one-stop shop for everything in Hutchinson. So we're going to keep plugging this, and our hope is that a lot of people, most people in Hutchinson, will download this thing and use it, because it's really going to be the ultimate one-stop shop for everything Hutchinson. So that's pretty much the news update. Now in our next segment, we're going to jump into some frequently asked questions about economic development. In this second segment, we're going to tackle some of the questions that I get asked a lot, and hopefully give people a little better understanding of economic development, why we do it, how we do it, and so forth. So the first most obvious question, I guess, is what is economic development? When we talk about that, what does that really mean? Well, the textbook answer, it's about improving the city's economic well-being and quality of life, and through wealth creation, through job growth, better living standards, that type of thing. That's sort of academic, I suppose, so I think a little bit more way to put it in everyday terms, really what it boils down to, it's creating jobs, it's raising incomes, it's expanding the tax base of the community. And that last item, when I say that, it's about getting more taxpayers into the system so that everyone else then pays proportionally a little bit less. The more people we get paying in, the easier the burden is for everyone else. So when I talk about economic development, the way I explain it to my family is that, basically I do all the stuff that most people think just magically happens. When you see a project like the Landing or the Jorgensen Hotel or whatever, people look at that, oh, that's nice. But the reality is that there's about 1 million little steps behind the scenes that need to happen. And that's what I do for a living, and that's what my board of directors oversees, is doing all that stuff to make good things happen for the community. So that's really what economic development is. The mission of the Hutchinson Economic Development Authority, we talked about this last episode a little bit, but it's really to facilitate redevelopment, job creation, and the success of manufacturing. And really that boils down to two things. It's taking care of the downtown and then taking care of our manufacturers. Those are kind of the twin pillars that we focus on at the EDA. A question that comes up, what kinds of businesses are we trying to attract and why those? Well, here in Hutchinson, we are very much a manufacturing city. That's just who we are. So at the EDA, our focus is on, not surprisingly, manufacturing. That's what we focus on. We have a certain amount of resources and time, and we have to be very strategic about how we use those. And so we put a lot of emphasis just on attracting manufacturing businesses. And really, when it comes to a local economy, manufacturing, that's sort of the engine that pulls the train, right? Manufacturing makes everything else possible. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. At the EDA, we focus on manufacturing. There's really three big reasons why it's focused on manufacturing. The first one, and probably the most important, is that if you looked at every segment of a local economy, and that would include things like entertainment, it would look at trade and transportation, so forth. If you looked at all just the different segments of the local economy, manufacturing is the one that pays the most on a weekly basis on average, right? Manufacturing jobs, those are the ones that really pay. And our goal is to raise incomes. And so that all fits together. We want to create as many high-paying jobs as we can. The second reason why we are focused on manufacturing is that particular sector of the economy, that has what's called the highest economic multiplier. And what do I mean by that? The economic multiplier. For the manufacturing companies in our town, they're always buying supplies. They need to buy services, all kinds of stuff. And so it takes a lot of stuff that they need to bring into the building in order to manufacture stuff that they ship out of the building. So really what it boils down to is that for every $1 of manufacturing income, that generates another $1.48 all the way up to $1.92 of additional economic activity. And this all comes from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. They have a lot of economists that look at this stuff all the way. They actually can calculate these figures. Just to kind of illustrate, imagine a manufacturer here in town, they need a pickup. And maybe it happens that they need new tires for the pickup. And so they're going to go to the local tire store and buy tires. That's generating additional economic activity in the community. And in fact, the manufacturer, they need a pickup. So somebody's got to build a pickup besides. So you can see where every dollar that manufacturers earn, that turns into additional economic activity that happens. And there's a big multiplier effect. And that's the second reason why we really focus on manufacturing here in Hutchinson. The third reason is that just like the economic multiplier, there's an employment multiplier. Every manufacturing job that gets created, it results in another 5 to 7 other jobs getting created in the economy, because somebody needs to make the tires, for example, for the pickup. Somebody needs to install the tires. Somebody needs to build a pickup. And then manufacturing employees, they consume all kinds of goods and services. They want to buy groceries. They're going to buy a house. They want to buy a car. They need to go get a haircut. They want to go watch a movie. So all that income that flows in through the manufacturer and is paid out through wages, manufacturing employees, that money gets spent in the economy, not just locally, but also regionally and nationally. So there's a huge employment multiplier that goes with manufacturing. And so really those are the three reasons that we focus so much on manufacturing here in Hutchinson. Another question that comes up then is, well, why don't we focus on retail businesses or commercial businesses or service businesses? And the answer is that we really do, but it's sort of indirect. Our focus, like I said, is to create these high-paying jobs, and that's in manufacturing. So we're creating manufacturing jobs, and then like I mentioned, all these manufacturing employees, they have money to spend, and they have things they want to buy, goods and services. And so when we bring in a new manufacturing company that results in new manufacturing employment, what we're really doing is creating demand. And demand, that's what we need to have so that a new barbershop can open, or a new grocery store can open, or a new toy store can open, or whatever it is the demand has to be there. That's what leads to the creation of retail businesses, service businesses like accountants or insurance agents or whatever, entertainment, dining establishments, all that. It all focuses on having the demand in the community. So we focus on manufacturing, and we get all these other things sort of as a byproduct. So it's just like what I was saying before. I mean, manufacturing really, that's the engine that pulls the train of our local economy. And every manufacturing job we create, that's good for the whole economy, no matter what type of business it is, because they all benefit. One question that comes up every once in a while is, why is Hutchinson Minnesota's manufacturing city? This is what we brand ourselves at the Economic Development Authority, and when I'm marketing and promoting Hutchinson for companies, I tell people, hey, we are Minnesota's manufacturing city. So why is that? Well, there's really three reasons, and the most important reason I would say is that we're home to the largest 3M production plant in the entire United States. 1.4 million square feet, currently about 1,300 employees. That's the biggest 3M plant in the whole family of 3M. So a huge reason why Hutchinson is Minnesota's manufacturing city. The second reason why we are Minnesota's manufacturing city is that we're home to what's called an industry cluster of precision high-tech manufacturing. So people ask, well, what's an industry cluster? Well, basically we have a family of companies that all kind of do similar things. They don't do the same thing, but they do similar things. And they require similar skill sets for their employees. They require similar inputs for supplies and so forth. A lot of similarities across the board. And because of that, all these companies are sort of like first cousins to each other. They all have the same needs or similar needs. And then here in Hutchinson too, we have things like Ridgewater College to provide the support for these companies. So we have this industry cluster of precision high-tech manufacturing. That's the second reason. Third reason why we really are Minnesota's manufacturing city is that of all the cities in Minnesota, there's over 850 cities in Minnesota. Hutchinson has the highest proportion of its workers that are employed in manufacturing. Here in Hutchinson, about 28%, or 28 out of every 100 people that have a job are employed in manufacturing. And that's the highest ratio of any city in Minnesota that I'm aware of. I've looked at a whole bunch, and I've never seen another city with a higher ratio. And just by way of comparison, if you were to look nationwide, maybe 10 or 10.5% of people nationally are employed in manufacturing. If you looked at Minnesota, it'd be about 13% are employed in manufacturing. Here in Hutchinson, it's over twice that, 28% employed in manufacturing. That's a huge number and a huge concentration of manufacturing employment. So those are the three reasons why Hutchinson really is Minnesota's manufacturing city. Another question that comes up is, why do we do the focus on downtown? As I mentioned earlier, kind of the twin pillars of economic development for us are our manufacturers and our downtown. And we put a lot of effort into our downtown. That's one of my big focus areas at work. So the reason for that is that really the downtown, that's sort of the face of our community. It's the front door of our community. That's the thing that people the first thing they see when they come and visit Hutchinson. And so we want to put out the best image possible for people coming to our community. That's our downtown. And a lot of other reasons. Part of it is our identity. I mean, Hutchinson's downtown, it's a big piece of who we really are and shows off all the best parts of our community. So we do want to keep that looking sharp, keep everything up to date. Another reason is that the downtown, that represents the biggest concentration of tax base in our community. There's a lot of big buildings with a lot of market value right in the downtown. And so we absolutely want to maintain that and enhance that wherever we can. Fourth reason is it's sort of a hub of the community. We have a lot of activities that happen downtown. We have a beautiful library square, a beautiful library, and some really just terrific assets that a lot of other communities are pretty darn jealous of, quite frankly. So because of that, we want to keep it all maintained. You've heard me probably mention in the past that one of our big challenges here in Hutchinson is we don't have enough workers, and we don't have enough manufacturing workers in particular. And so that's another reason for helping to promote the downtown and maintaining the downtown, is that it helps us with attracting talent. Because people see that, they get a feel for what this community is about, and they want to become a part of it. Finally, downtown, It's a center for culture and art and entertainment, and we want to promote that at every opportunity. So I think all of those reasons and more are really why we put so much emphasis on maintaining our downtown and hopefully making it better all the time. Another question that comes up is, why do we have people like me doing economic development? Why is that needed? Should government be doing economic development? And that's a fair question. And I don't know if there's any one definitive answer to that. People have different viewpoints, and I think they're all valid. Here in Hutchinson, we've always taken the attitude that we want to be promoting economic development, because while a certain amount of it, yes, does help take care of itself, it can be made a lot better if we have somebody or a group pushing it too. And the best way I can illustrate this is just with a little story. Back in 1947, shortly after World War II, we had an empty building down on Adams Street. There was a company there that manufactured rope for the military during the war, and when the war was over, that business closed down and that building was empty. And a group of local business leaders said we should be doing something about that. And so they hopped in the car, went to St. Paul to visit the headquarters of 3M, and they talked to the leadership there and said, hey, we have this building in Hutchinson. You should come out and do some production there. We have this building out there. And that's how 3M came to Hutchinson in 1947. And now we know where that all landed, because, from that one building, which is building number 1 at 3M, now we have this gigantic 3M complex that's the biggest employer in central Minnesota. So that's why we do economic development. Yes, certain things will take care of themselves, but we can make it better if we're in there pushing. And so that's our mission at the EDA, is we want to get the most out of this that we possibly can. So we're going to be pushing economic development to create those jobs, to get higher wages for our workers in our community, and to broaden out the tax base. So that's why we do economic development. Question that comes up, how does economic development get funded and who pays for it? Well, there's really 2 ways that it gets funded here in Hutchinson, and every community is different that way. A chunk of it comes from your property taxes, and I would say for a typical household, maybe that's $20 a year, $25 per year. And each year the EDA, we have to go to the city council and ask them to authorize our tax levy so that we can have our operating budget for next year. So a chunk of it comes from you guys. Here's how it would look on your property tax statement. There's a line item there towards the bottom where it talks about other taxing entities, and the Hutchinson EDA is in that, along with the HRA, the Housing and Redevelopment Agency, and then the Mid-Minnesota Development Commission's in there too. So between all 3 of those, I think it works out to maybe $40 a year per household, plus or minus, of which the EDA is maybe 20 or 25. So the other piece of the budget for economic development comes from grant writing. We get a lot of money that we pull in from the state and the federal government. I spend a lot of time writing grants. And so as you can see there on the screen, I kind of did a little breakout for a 17-year period from 2007 to 2024. So over that 17 years, the EDA, we pulled in about over $2 million, a little bit over $2 million in tax dollars that we used to operate. And then at that same time, over that same period, we pulled in over $6.1 million from outside sources. So if you were to imagine a pie, basically a third of the economic development budget comes from local taxpayers, the other 2/3 comes from external sources, state and federal. So pretty good deal, I think, overall. And then the benefit, of course, is that we get jobs created, we get higher wages, we get more tax base, we get good projects, we get a vibrant downtown, we got a constantly growing local economy. That's what we get for that. One question that comes up a lot is, why can't we get a Kohl's in this town? And that's a good question. And I've actually talked with the Kohl's people, and they laid it out for me. And there's a couple different reasons. It really boils down to demographics and geography. For these retailers, particularly for these national retailers, pretty much everything they do depends on demographics. They are looking at communities and what's the population of that community, because that drives a lot of their location decisions. When a community goes over 10,000 population, that's going to bring a certain number of retail businesses. When it goes over 14,000, that brings another wave of retail businesses. When it goes over 15,000, which is where Hutchinson is at now, that's another wave of businesses. So as we keep growing and gaining population, more than anything else, that's what's going to be bringing these different retail businesses to town. For Kohl's, like I said, I've talked to them and they've told me directly, they said, Miles, our customers will come to us. And on the map there on your screen, I put little red dots. They've got a Kohl's in Wilmer, they've got one in St. Cloud, there's one in the cities, there's one in New Ulm. And they said they'll just come over to where we are. We don't need to put one in Hutchinson. Now, that said, that could change tomorrow. I mean, who knows? They really don't tell us anything in advance. I mean, they know Hutchinson better than we know Hutchinson. And when they think there's a profit to be made, that's when they're going to show up. Now, kind of along with this, people ask me, what can we do to get a Kohl's? What can we be doing to help get a Kohl's? And the answer to that is to shop at Kohl's, because every time you go to St. Cloud or Wilmer or wherever to buy something at Kohl's, they get your zip code, whether it's from your credit card or from the check or whatever. And they keep track of all this stuff. So the more times they see 55350 pop up, the better our chances of getting a Kohl's here in Hutchinson. So if you really wanted to work it, you could go in and buy something at Kohl's and bring it out to the car and then go in and buy something else and then get the zip code in there twice. Because the more they see it, the more likely they are to show up. So we'll see what happens. What's coming up on Hutchinson Economic Developments? You know, this show, it's a collaboration between HCVN and the Hutchinson Economic Development Authority. And we're planning to be doing this every 2 weeks now throughout the coming year. And basically what you can look forward to is each episode we're going to have an update, news and information. We'll have information about current projects that are going on. And then I think as we go on, we'll start doing some profiles of different companies to give people an idea what's really going on behind the scenes of some of these big manufacturers that we have in town. And then as time goes by, we'll probably do some histories of projects too, just to help people understand what goes into doing a Cornerstone Commons redevelopment, or the State Theater redevelopment, or the Jorgensen redevelopment, or whatever it is. Because there's a million little parts that go into these things that I think people would really find interesting. So that's what you can look forward to for upcoming editions of this show. And then finally, what if I have more questions? What if you have more questions? Certainly feel free to give me a call anytime. I put my number there on the screen. I work for you guys, and so feel free to give me a call anytime and ask any question, and I'll do my very best to give you a good answer to that. So that's it for this week's edition of Hutchinson Economic Developments. We'll be back in 2 weeks. I think we'll do news updates, and then we'll do a look at downtown development, dig into that a little bit. So we'll see you in a couple weeks.